So let's start with calories. And myth number one, that you must count calories to lose weight. And I won't even go into my diatribe of how many people are still teaching this, how many dietitians out there are still telling people this stuff. But let's put this myth to rest once and for all. So the first question we want to ask, and you'll notice, by the way, let me give you just a little backstory, 2 seconds on me, is that I'm always about critical thinking. I'm always about when you hear data, when CNN reporters tell you, or the New York Times tells you, oh, people who ate this food had a 29% greater risk of whatever it is, breast cancer. I am always about what does that mean? 29% greater than what? How do we analyze that? How do we critically analyze the information we're getting? So let's start with this. What the heck is a calorie? So the technical definition of a calorie are there tiny little creatures that live in your clothes and sew your clothes tighter every time you get dressed. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Here's what a calorie really is. A calorie is just a unit of energy. And it technically, and this you will never have to remember this, I'm just telling it to you for all those who might be curious, it's technically the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree centigrade. Okay, you never have to remember that. What you do have to remember is that calories were kind of invented or discovered or first measured in something called a bomb calorimeter. So they would literally put some food into this machine and they'd burn it and they'd look at the ash and they'd kind of compute from that, how much energy was in that food, this unit of energy. And that's what the one on the right is what it really looks like. And as you can see, they put the food in, they heat it up, and then they measure the temperature change, and that's how they kind of come up with this metric for calories. There's only one problem, and that's where you get all this stuff. If I could see you and we were doing this in person, I'd ask you how many people have heard that 1 pound of fat, 3,500 calories. You got to burn up 3,500 calories, $500 a day. You go lose 1 pound a week. How many have heard that? It is utter and complete you know what it is? It's partial truth. But what's left out of that, you could drive a Mack truck through. So but this is all based on this notion of calories in, calories out. It's called the energy balance theory. And you have all heard it. You've all heard it. If you eat more calories than you take in, you're going to gain weight. And if you eat more calories in are less than you burn, you're going to lose weight. And if you lose 3,500 calories, you will lose a pound. Okay, the problem with this, it's what I call the checkbook theory of human metabolism. You all have checkbooks, right? We make a deposit and we write some checks against it. Now, if we write more checks than we have money for, we're in a deficit. And if that were calories in the body, the theory goes, well, if you burn up more, if you spend more calories than you take in, you're going to have a deficit, and therefore you're going to lose weight. And conversely, if you're earning more money than your expenses are, you're going to have a savings account. And in human metabolism, that would be if you take in more calories than you burn, you're going to have a savings account, and it's going to be your muffin top. It's going to be your fat stores. There's only one problem with that. The human body is not a bomb calorimeter. It doesn't work like a bomb calorimeter. It works like a chemistry set. You put in different things, and then in this big complex body with all these organs and all these systems and all these metabolic pathways, stuff happens and it percolates, and you burn calories in different ways. And it is not calories in, calories out. It's what those calories do to your metabolism. And the main thing that they do is they turn on hormones. And the main thing that controls weight is your hormones, not your calories. Let me give you a fast example. And by the way, these 7 myths, every one of them we could spend an hour on. And we'd be here all night. And we do webinars like this every single month on specific topics. I'm giving you a broad overview of 7 huge myths that are probably going to be startling to a lot of you because you all grew up on them. I grew up on them. I was a low-fat guy in the 90s. So don't worry if we don't get all the details. I want to alert you to how much information that you have been told, that you and I have been told, that is just boneheadedly wrong. And I want to give you some sense of why it's wrong so that you can begin your journey and then learn with us more details as you need them. But for now, the important thing to remember is that 1,000 calories of sushi and 1,000 calories of Snickers and 1,000 calories of ice cream do not have the same effect on your hormones. The calories may be the same, but the hormonal effect is very different, and it's hormones that drive weight gain. And that's why you see this everywhere. Control your hormones for weight loss. I just grabbed this off of Google Images. There's a million of them. And that's why you see people like my friend Sarah who write books like The Hormone Reset Diet, because they understand that it's hormones, not calories, that are driving weight loss and weight gain. And that is why we want to make sure that the calories we eat actually have an effect on the hormones that drive our metabolism that is a good effect, not a bad effect. We don't want to eat in such a way as we drive up the fat storing hormones and we drive down the fat burning hormones. And that's what you need to learn about this. This is just a very fast graphic showing you how many hormones are involved in appetite. Incretin and ghrelin and insulin and leptin. And we have whole webinars on insulin. It's probably one of the most important hormones in terms of fat storage. So we'll get into that as time goes on, but I just wanted you to get the basic idea that this calorie stuff is just a bunch of nonsense. It's 1950s nutrition. It doesn't talk about what really drives metabolism. Okay, exercise. Myth number 2, I know you're probably, I've got a lot of wide eyes now. We're looking at this slide going, wait a minute, we got here because of an exercise program. Are you telling us exercise is useless? No, listen carefully. I'm telling you, exercise has been way overrated as a way to lose weight. Now, and if you really would like to get into the science on this, just Google Gary Taubes, Taubes. This is a pretty good explanation of why exercise doesn't really make us thinner. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, wait a minute. If exercise doesn't change your body, which, by the way, I did not say that. I said it isn't the most effective way to lose weight. And why am I joining Metabolic Renewal? I just joined this fantastic exercise program by this genius guy, Jay Tita, and he's telling me exercise. I'm not telling you exercise doesn't matter. I'm telling you actually the same thing Jade would say. So if you think for 1 minute that I don't believe in exercise, let me just remind you that I am the biggest Jade Tita fan in the world. This is my personal mastery, the word just escaped me. Mastermind group. Esther Blum, the nutritionist who wrote Why Cave Women Don't Get Fat. Jade and me, we are dear friends. I love what Jade does. There's almost no light between the two of us. But the fact is, when we talk about exercise, and we talk about, well, I'm fat, but if I just got to the gym more, no, the gym is not the way to lose that weight. And in any contest between diet and exercise, and Jade would agree with me, I know that, there is no contest that diet matters more. There's an old saying, you can't out-train a bad diet. But here's what exercise does do. It may not make you thin, but it will reduce the risk for just about every long-term disease you don't want to have, from cancer to depression to Alzheimer's to dementia, all of them. And it's, interestingly, the only way to maintain weight loss. What we're objecting to here is the myth that, oh, if these guys would only go to the gym and work another hour on the Stairmaster, they'd be thin. No, that's not how it works. You can't eat 7 meals at McDonald's and, and get on the Stairmaster for an hour and expect it to change. You can't, there's the saying, you can't out-exercise a bad diet. So, myth number 3. And I'm actually presenting at any of you who are in Southern California, by the way. Bulletproof Coffee has a annual conference. The 5th annual biohacking conference put on by Bulletproof Coffee is in October in Pasadena. I will be speaking at it, and I will be speaking a lot about this particular myth, which is that eating fat makes you fat. Now, again, if we were doing this live, I'd ask you, how many of you have heard that the low-fat diet is the way to go? That it will make you thinner, it will make you healthier, and you would probably all raise your hands. And those of you who do know me, or who have read any of my stuff or know anything about my background, know that I was very much in this camp when I started as a trainer on the floor of Equinox fitness clubs in 1990. I was the guy that would send back the egg white omelet if it had any of the yolk in it, because God knows if I ate that yolk, I was going to get a heart attack. So I understand if you have been inundated with this bullshit, because we all have. But it's a myth. It's not true. Eating fat does not make you fat. And we could go for hours on the metabolic effects of fat versus carbohydrates and what they do to those hormones we talked about in myth number 1. But we don't have time for all that. I will tell you that I wrote a book about this called Smart Fat with Dr. Stephen Masley, the star of PBS shows and things like that. Which talks about the myth of fat and how important fat is. It's not even that it's not bad for you. It's like absolutely necessary for your health on 100 different ways that we don't have time to go into. But just know for now that what you have learned about fat causing heart disease, causing you to be obese, leading to diabetes, all of it absolutely untrue, provable by research. We don't have time to go into all the studies right now, but know that this is a central tenet of all of us here at Metabolic Mastery Club. The guys that started it, me, Jay, Dean Rafalak, all of us, the entire staff, all of the scientific advisory board are right behind this notion. So you will see in all of our eating programs and all of our dietary advice, you will see a lot more fat than you may be used to, with very good reason. Just because the American Dietetics Association hasn't caught up to it yet doesn't mean it's not true. Okay, myth number 4. The key to losing weight is having tremendous willpower. Now look, okay, again, willpower is a skill we all want. I don't know how many people have heard of the marshmallow test. Again, if I had the pleasure of seeing your faces, I would ask you. Probably not a lot of people. Some people may have heard of it, so I'll tell you very briefly. It is a very, very famous test designed by psychologists quite a number of years ago, where they basically take a bunch of kids about this age and they give them a marshmallow. And then they tell them they're going to go out of the room unsupervised for 10 or 15 minutes. And they tell the kids, if you don't eat the marshmallow, when I come back, you'll get double marshmallows. But if you eat it, you don't get the reward later on. And then they film them and they watch them, and you can see these kids and they struggle with it. It's like this kind of, they're looking at it and they go, oh my God, you can see the struggle. Here's what they have found in 20 years of research on the marshmallow test. The kids who are able to resist the marshmallow have better grades, earn more money, have more satisfactory relationships. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. This is one of the biggest predictors. How you do on the marshmallow test as a kid is one of the biggest predictors of success in life. So my point is, willpower, sure, you want to be able to control impulses. Of course you do. But willpower only goes that far. How long can you hang from a windowsill by your fingernails? I don't care how much motivation you've got. So we don't try to put together eating plans that require lots of willpower. What we do is try to put together eating plans that don't create a lot of cravings. Which would be better, to have the cravings and use that willpower to hang on and not eat, or to maybe not have so many cravings? How about that? So you don't have to use up your willpower. Now, I'll tell you something else that that has been discovered in the psychology research on willpower, which is that it's very much a finite muscle. You have so much to use during the day. And one of the reasons that people are so lackadaisical about their food at night, and why nighttime eating is so much of a problem for so many people, is you get that willpower, you use it up 100 times a day when you're not even aware of it. You stay in a meeting that's boring, you finish a deadline that you don't want to do, you work like a dog, you get on the traffic, you pick up your kid, you're constantly using willpower to not just escape the whole thing and run off to Bali, right? So your willpower is constantly being engaged all day long, and you only have so much of it. It's not infinite. And so why would we want, if we could avoid having to use all that willpower to resist foods, wouldn't it be better to not have the cravings for those foods so we didn't have to use up so much of that finite skill? We think it would be. Okay, myth number 5. I get very exercised about this. Forgive me if I go off on a tangent. You should pay attention to the government guidelines for eating. Okay, you should never, never, never pay attention to the government guidelines for eating, and I will tell you why. Besides the fact that they're almost always 100% wrong. But here's why. What a lot of people don't understand about the USDA is that they have, that's the United States Department of Agriculture, is that they had two mandates when they were formed in the 1800s. They had two purposes, two mission statements. And by the way, this is all, you can look this up on Wikipedia or just look up the mission statement of the USDA. I mean, it's all, this is not made up stuff, folks. It's not fake news. This is what the USDA was set up to do. It was set up to do two admirable things. The first was to provide the American people with good, reliable nutrition information to promote health, right? But the second mandate, which doesn't get talked about too much, was to protect, support, and expand American agriculture. Well, think about it for a minute. That's a little bit like giving the tobacco industry two mandates. One is to educate the public about the dangers of tobacco, and two is to sell lots of Marlboros. Kind of doesn't work too well. The top four edible crops in the United States economy are sugar, wheat, corn, and soy. And what you will learn if you hang out with us long enough, spend a year with us on Metabolic Mastery Club, and you will know more than most doctors why those foods are probably the four most dangerous in the American diet. Yet that is what the U.S. agricultural economy runs on. So expecting the USDA to tell you to eat less inflammatory grains is never going to happen. It would be like expecting Philip Morris to do a public service commercial telling you that cigarettes cause cancer and you should never smoke them. It ain't going to happen. And there's lots of other reasons why the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, which still recommends high-carb diets for diabetics, they're so full of shit, it's almost, it's jaw-dropping. And yet they're not bad people. They're well-meaning people. And as we'll see, and if you hang out with us long enough, you'll see too, it's very possible to interpret research in lots of different ways, depending on what your point of view is and depending on what your vested interests are. And that's certainly what goes on with the government guidelines, which have, by the way, are influenced by every lobbyist you can imagine for every food product, for big food, for big pharma. All of them influence the guidelines enormously. And I am not a conspiracy theorist. I think the government does a lot of things that are very good. One of them is not giving nutrition information or nutrition advice. That is not what you should turn to the government for. Myth number 6. You need carbs for energy. How many people have heard that? I'll just pretend that I'm seeing you live and everybody's raising their hand. You need carbs for energy. You can't cut out a whole major food group. We've all heard this stuff. So I like to, when I'm speaking live, I love to use the example of, you know the show Survivor? Everybody knows the show Survivor, right? So there's the first season of Survivor when they weren't using actors and they didn't have agencies to book these things and to get, very photogenic. They really got actual people. And there's your first season of Survivor. Here's the thing I always say to people. There's Rudy there. He's on the bottom. You can see Richard Hatch is in the back. All right. So anyway, I want you all to pretend with me for a moment that you are the cast of the next season of Survivor. And I am going to divide you. I'm going to pretend you're an auditorium of people sitting in front of me. And I'm going to divide the auditorium into two groups, the group on my left and the group on my right. Now, you guys are all going to go on the island of Survivor. The group on my left is going to have no fat and no protein in their diet and is going to eat nothing but carbohydrates. The group on my right is going to eat no carbohydrates and nothing but fat and protein for a year. Okay, does everybody have that? I'm going to assume everybody's got that. Okay, at the end of the year, the group on the left would be dead. The group on the right would be thriving. Let me say that again. If you ate nothing but carbohydrates, no fat, no protein, you would die. If you ate nothing but fat and protein, you would do just fine. Thank you very much. Now, does that mean you shouldn't eat carbs? No, it doesn't mean that at all. There's a lot of things from better carbs like fruits and vegetables, lots of things, phytochemicals, catechins, flavonoids, all kinds of wonderful plant compounds, fiber. They're great for you, but you don't need them in your diet. You need fat and protein. The actual physiological need for carbohydrate in the human diet is 0. Again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't eat them. It means that it's boneheadedly nuts for government agencies and the American Dietetic Association to recommend diets that are 75 or 65% of the one macronutrient you could do fine without, and put low amounts on the ones that you absolutely need to live. That's what's nuts. So when you eat a high-fat diet, what do you do for energy? Well, it's very simple. When there's not a lot of carbs coming through your system, your body stops relying on sugar because there's no longer an endless supply of sugar. So what would be like, all right, so it now has to burn fat. And when it is burning fat, it produces a metabolic byproduct of fat called ketones. And ketones are a superfuel for energy. They fire up the muscles. They are great for the brain. There is so much work being done now on ketogenic diets. Those are diets, very high-fat diets that produce a lot of these ketones. And there is a ton of research on ketogenic diets and athletic performance. It's long been known to be great for weight loss. A ketogenic diet, a ketone-generating diet, high-fat diet, was always stage 1 of the Atkins diet. That's why people lost weight on it. But it's for much more than just losing weight. So you always have this alternative source of fuel that comes from the metabolism of fat. And by the way, I'd like you, this is the study I was looking for. You guys, I don't know how to do PowerPoint enough to make these sentences jump out, but I want you to look at the, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but the 5th line, countdown in the abstract, first line starts the word during, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in, and you'll see, if you can see my screen, you might be able to see my mouse. Read this line. Indeed, there is no clear requirement for dietary carbohydrates for human adults. Okay? That's not some internet fake news. That's the Journal of International Sports Science Nutrition. It's a published, peer-reviewed article that you can find on PubMed. So much for you need carbs for energy. And now my favorite. Now, this is the one that keeps me going. This is the one ever since I wrote the book in 2012. This is my mission. The dumb, stupid, out-of-date idea that cholesterol causes heart disease. Now, why does this matter to you guys? I'll tell you why. Because if you tell people that you're on the kind of program that you're on, Metabolic Renew, Metabolic Factor, any of the variations of the programs we teach, one of the first things they're going to do is say, well, what about all that fat? The fat raises your cholesterol, and you get heart disease because cholesterol goes up. And you're eating all these eggs, and they have cholesterol. So this seriously affects all of us. I have this story I got to tell. I'm going to tell at the Bulletproof Conference, and I'll try it out on you guys first. So at Bulletproof, the guys at Bulletproof Coffee, by the way, if you don't know, is coffee with fat in it. So they basically put butter in their coffee, and they frequently just have that for breakfast, or they have that for the morning meal. They do kind of intermittent fast, but it's basically fat in your coffee: MCT oil, coconut oil, butter, all kinds of things like that in the coffee. So they usually at all the conferences now, there's a Bulletproof exhibition, and they always like exhibit, and they up there, serving coffee and letting people taste it and doing all that stuff. So one day, I think it was either the Scripps conference. I think it was the Scripps conference. So the Bulletproof Coffee people are there, and they're serving the Bulletproof Coffee. And there's this one. I'm online to get it, and this woman ahead of me, and she says, very haughty woman, and she says, "Young man, you're putting butter in the coffee." And he says, "Well, yes, that's exactly what Bulletproof Coffee is. But it's got lots of fat, and that raises your cholesterol." And he starts to explain some of what I'm going to explain to you, but, he starts to do his version of that explanation. She says, "Young man, I'll have you know, I'm a medical doctor." And I said to her, "Ma'am, you may be a medical doctor, but you're also an idiot." No, I didn't say that. I wanted to say that. I didn't say that. So what I did say is a lot of what's in this book, and I do ask you, I'm not shamelessly promoting my books, but if you're interested in a more detailed discussion about this, because after all, we all grew up thinking this. Everybody thinks this. You are probably all seeing doctors Unless you're seeing really good functional medicine practitioners, you're all seeing doctors who are worried about your cholesterol. Probably a lot of you have been told to go on statins, which makes me ill. And this book was written, by the way, with Stephen Sinatra, who is a board certified cardiologist. So, you don't have to just take my word for it. This is when we went on Dr. Oz. Cholesterol, mistake number one. Cholesterol causes heart attacks. And we were very happy to be able to be given a forum with Dr. Oz on this subject. And as I said on the Dr. Oz show, I said trying to lower the risk of heart disease by lowering your cholesterol is like trying to lower your calories by taking the lettuce off your Big Mac. It's the wrong target. It's the wrong target. Lowering cholesterol is not the same as lowering the risk for heart disease. Now, it's interesting how the conventional wisdom has changed. Back in the 80s, this is back in the 1961, this is the guy who gave us the low-fat diet. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Ansel Keys on the cover of Time when he claimed that saturated fats in the diet clogged arteries and caused heart disease. And now, 2014, 40, 50 years later, we were wrong. They don't cause heart disease at all. That was cholesterol back in 1954, or was it 84? Yeah, 1984, and here, of course, is cholesterol back in 1999. So this stuff changes. And finally, I want to just introduce a concept that goes beyond just what we eat and how we exercise. Because I've been doing this 26 years, and a couple years ago, I did what they call a summit. Maybe some of you have been to summits. We pick a topic and then you interview like 30 thought leaders. I mean, well-known superstars in the field, and you get their opinion, do the videos and the interviews and the transcripts, and people come and they listen and they buy the tapes. And I did something called the Truth About Fat Loss Summit, and I interviewed 37 thought leaders. And when I tell you thought leaders, I'm talking about New York Times bestseller authors, people with major clinics, big clinical practices, people who had published research on PubMed. I mean, the experts in the field from every position you can imagine about losing weight, the mistakes we make, what's wrong with what we teach, what have you found in your clinical practice. And I want to tell you that out of that 37 people, all right, 36 of the 37, because one of them was an academic researcher who didn't really deal with clients, every single health guru that I interviewed long ago figured out that it's not just about the food. That weight and your metabolism and your ultimate health involves a lot more than diet and exercise. And the other day I interviewed one of my heroes. I have maybe 3 heroes in the health and wellness space, and one of them is the great Frank Lipman. I urge you to look him up online and read any book he's ever written. His book, The New Food Rules, I give out for Christmas gifts every single year. I buy 10 of them, just give them to my 10 favorite people. And I interviewed Frank, who's from South Africa, and this last concept that I want to talk about for just a moment that illustrates it being more than just food and exercise, what you eat and what you do. He used a term called Ubuntu. It's a South African term. And it really encompasses all the rest of the stuff that matters. And that has to do not just with what you eat, and not just with how many hours you put in on the Stairmaster, but with how you think, and how you feel, and what you put psychic energy on, and how much you help other people. I've talked about this a lot of times. One of my favorite studies ever done in the world was done by the psychologist Ellen Langner at Harvard. And she did this most amazing study in which she went to a nursing home. And she gave half the people in the nursing home. Get this. This is a true, absolutely true story. You can, again, look this up. Ellen Langner, she gave half the people in the nursing home a plant to take care of. But we're not talking a hothouse orchid. We're talking a snake plant, which is the kind like my grandmother used to have. These things. You can't kill a snake plant. I think I've got one in my garage. It's there since like 1982. You sprinkle it with water once a year. You can't kill them. So they require very little care. But she gave half of them a snake plant and told them to take care of it. told them to put some attention on making sure it was healthy and taking care of the plant. Okay, she goes back and she does some tests. The people who were given the plant to take care of had significantly better metrics on every medical test. Their blood pressure was lower. They had less doctor visits. They had less sick days. They recovered better from sicknesses. You name the metric, they did better on it because they took care of a plant. That's what taking care of something else, taking some attention off yourself, putting it on others, on making a contribution, on giving back. That's what that does. And that's why I like to put quotes like this up and end on quotes like this, because I never want anyone to leave anything that I have ever done, not a seminar, not a webinar, not a lecture, not reading a book, thinking that it's only about food and exercise. Because it's not. The most important things, and these do affect your weight, and they do affect your metabolism, and we'll see that over the year when we do these webinars. You'll see how thoughts actually, there's an entire field of study called psychoneuroimmunology that studies how our thoughts affect our immune system. It's a study that's been around for 20 years. Google it, psychoneuroimmunology. It's a serious aspect of science. So I like to leave people with these kinds of thoughts, that you've not lived today till you've really done something for someone who can never repay you. That's a beautiful thought, and it affects your metabolism just as surely as what you eat, because it all matters. Every single thing, your relationships, your digestion, your sleep patterns, your sex life, they're all related. They all talk to each other. It all matters. So thank you very much for coming. I hope this at least stimulated some thought and got you thinking and got you, wait a minute, I never thought about that, and will help to stimulate you on your personal journey to find your personal truth. Because one of the things I believe very, very firmly, my favorite book in graduate school, I tell everybody this, was a book called If You Meet the Guru on the Road, If You Meet the Buddha on the Road, Kill Him. And I wrote a blog about that. It's on my website if you want to see it, about not being a guru. Don't follow gurus. And that includes my dear friend Jade. It includes me. It includes anybody who gets in front of you and says, I have the truth. What we have, hopefully, if we're doing our job, is the ability to help you ask the right questions to find the answers for you. We don't have the answers. All we are great teachers.